The Civil War was a time of tremendous change for American women, particularly in the South. In the decades before the war, Americans had a shared ideal vision of what women should be, which was moral and religious, and they were supposed to pass these values on to their children. It was believed that any public involvement would taint them, so they were encouraged not to work, not to speak in public, not even to develop any political opinions of their own. Now, this was obviously an ideal that not every woman could adhere to. Up north, you have lots of poorer women who are working in factories, and down south, you have poor whites and slave women who are working in the fields. But it was a very strong ideal. But the war changed all of this. With husbands and fathers away from home, women have to fill in for their roles as well as fill in for all of these additional wartime activities, which were required to continue the Confederate war effort. Now, a few women did take a very obvious stance as far as disguising themselves as men and enlisting in the Army. This was only possibly a few hundred women at most. But most Confederate women made important contributions in a variety of ways. At the outbreak of war, many women made presentation flags, which they would give to military units either from their area or who were passing through their area. During the war, many women also served as nurses for the Confederate Army, either temporarily when there was a battle near their home, or as a more permanent vocation where they would actually travel with the Army or at a particular established hospital. They would do everything from nursing the soldiers to cooking for them and doing their laundry. There were a lot of slave and free black women who were employed in these positions, but also a lot of white women, some of whom were in a position to volunteer their services, but others who were actually receiving pay. They endured grisly and filthy conditions in order to provide sustenance and comfort for the soldiers. Women also worked in various government offices, such as in the Confederate Treasury, where they signed notes. They also worked in the post office, sorting letters. Poorer women also worked in factories many times, where they would be making things such as munitions, friction primers, bullets, that sort of thing, for which they were considered particularly fit because of their delicate and small fingers.
The first important Confederate spy was a young widow named Rose O'Neal Greenhow. Mrs. Greenhow, as everyone called her, was born in the South but raised in Washington, D.C. She was a bright and influential socialite, friend to Lincoln and Buchanan before him. Both presidents dined at her table often. So, while the Confederate Army awaited the Union forces, Mrs. Greenhow laid her hands on the Union marching orders. On July 10, 1861, she got word to General Beauregard. She even specified the Union Army's route. 11 days later, the Confederates had brought up 8,500 reinforcements, and the Union suffered its first major defeat around a creek called Bull Run. However, Mrs. Greenhow was entirely too visible. Her Southern sympathies were no secret, and she had access to key people. The Union planted spies around her and intercepted her messages. They had no trouble breaking the amateur code she was using. By late August, they had her under house arrest. So she sent up a smoke screen of complaint about the injustice of her treatment while she bribed guards and servants to get her messages out. She gave false or useless information to people trying to gather evidence against her. She gave what solid intelligence she could still glean to those she could trust. But now she was cleverer about packaging it. One trick was to write a message, then wind a ball of yarn around it. Another was to weave it into a woman's hair bun.
Maria Isabella Boyd was born on May 9, 1844. She was a Confederate spy in the American Civil War. Living in Martinsburg, Virginia, Belle Boyd passed information on Union Army activities in the Shenandoah area to General Stonewall Jackson. She married Samuel Hardinage. Then in 1866, when he died, leaving her with a small daughter to support, she became an actress. Belle Boyd later married John Hammond and moved to California, where she gave birth to a son. Fighting mental illness, she moved with Hammond to the Baltimore area and had 3 more sons. The family moved to Dallas, Texas, where she divorced Hammond and married a young actor In 1886, they moved to Ohio, and Belle Boyd began to appear on stage in a Confederate uniform to talk about her time as a spy. Belle Boyd died in Wisconsin and is buried in Wisconsin Dells.
Hi, Deanna. I like you. LOL, smiley face. I don't want llama stockings because they will be itchy.